The year is 1939. Europe is on the brink of chaos, and the insidious tendrils of Nazi Germany are reaching into the heart of Central Europe. On March 14th, a pivotal moment occurs. Amidst the dismantling of Czechoslovakia, Slovakia declares its independence. But this independence is a facade, a cruel illusion. It's a puppet state, a tool of Hitler's Third Reich, and at its head stands a figure of profound contradiction, Jozef Tiso. A Catholic priest, a man who once preached faith and morality, now embraces the intoxicating allure of power and collaboration. Under his rule, Slovakia becomes a mirror of Nazi policies, enacting brutal anti-Jewish laws, silencing opposition, and orchestrating the deportation of thousands to the chilling depths of Nazi death camps. He justifies repression with twisted religious rhetoric, abandoning his sacred vows for the hollow promises of nationalist ambition. This is a story of Jozef Tiso, a man whose legacy remains a chilling testament to the corrupting influence of power and ideology. To understand Tiso, we must first look at his origins. He was born on October 13, 1887, in the small town of Bitka, then a part of the vast Austro-Hungarian Empire. His early life was deeply rooted in the traditions of Catholicism. He was raised with the austere discipline of religious education, a foundation that would shape his worldview, or so it seemed. In July 1910, he was ordained as a priest, a moment of profound spiritual commitment. But the world was changing rapidly. The collapse of the Austro-Hungarian Empire in 1918 and the subsequent formation of Czechoslovakia presented Tiso with a new stage, a stage for political ambition. He became an active politician, rising to prominence in the Hlinka Slovak People's Party. Initially, Tiso was perceived by many as a moderate, a voice of reason. He combined his religious convictions with a genuine desire to secure greater autonomy for the Slovak nation within the broader framework of the Czechoslovak state. But the winds of change were blowing, and the specter of Nazi Germany was growing ever larger. The mid-1930s saw a dramatic shift in Tiso's rhetoric. As the shadow of Nazi Germany lengthened, his pronouncements took on an increasingly nationalist and, ultimately, authoritarian tone. The Munich Agreement in 1938, where Nazi Germany annexed parts of Czechoslovakia's borderlands, catapulted Tiso to greater prominence. In the ensuing chaos, he became a central figure in the reshaping of Slovak territory. As late as the autumn of 1938, he was at the forefront of politicians who exploited the weakening Czechoslovak state to declare Slovak autonomy, even if initially within the existing framework. One of the earliest and most brutal acts of his nascent leadership occurred in November 1938, after the Vienna Award, which ceded southern Slovakia to Hungary. This was a significant political defeat for Tiso, and he sought a scapegoat. He turned to the Jewish population. Under his directive, local authorities were ordered to round up Jews deemed undesirable by the regime from the ceded territory and deport them to the lands now under Hungarian control. These deportations were a chilling prelude to the horrors that would follow. Even during the existence of Czechoslovakia, Tiso's regime began to suppress political opponents, threatening them with concentration camps, rigging elections, and eroding the civic life of Slovak society. These were the early warning signs, the indicators of descent into authoritarianism. Tiso's most significant role, from a Nazi perspective, came in March 1939. With the support of radicalized Slovak elements, Czechoslovakia was dismantled and a collaborationist Slovak state was born. At its head was Jozef Tiso, the man who had facilitated the Nazi dismemberment of the Republic. From 1939 onwards, Tiso wielded unprecedented power. No longer merely a spiritual leader or an advocate for Slovak rights, he now held a combined authority of head of state and leader of the Hlinka Slovak People's Party. This concentration of power allowed him to shape the policies of the new state, and his name became inextricably linked with the unfolding terror. With the outbreak of World War II, Tiso's regime entered a new phase, marked by even closer collaboration with Nazi Germany. He sent the Slovak army to invade Poland alongside the Nazis in September 1939. As Slovakia became increasingly subservient to German interests, Tiso's role evolved from nationalist leader to willing accomplice in a broader totalitarian agenda. As president and de facto leader, He controlled not only the legislative and executive functions of the state, but also the security apparatus, including the infamous Linka's Guards. This paramilitary force was instrumental in enforcing the regime's draconian policies, contributing directly to the climate of fear and repression. Under Tiso's rule, anti-Semitic measures were not isolated incidents, but part of a comprehensive strategy. The introduction of the Jewish Code in September 1941 institutionalized discrimination against Jews, stripping them of their civil rights, barring them from public service, and laying the groundwork for their deportation to concentration camps. This code was one of the most extensive and cruel anti-Jewish legal norms adopted in Europe during World War II. Tiso, a Catholic priest, also had to reconcile his actions with his religious conscience, or lack thereof. The deportations of the Jewish population began in March 1942. Between March and October 1942, over 57,000 Jews were deported to Nazi concentration camps in German-occupied Poland. By the summer of 1942, the Slovak army, which Tiso headed as president, had been on the Eastern Front for over a year, participating in the murder of civilians, including Jews. Slovak politicians had information about these atrocities. Yet, in August 1942, Tiso, fully aware of the likely fate of the deported Jews, delivered a chilling speech. He asked, "Is it Christian if the Slovak nation wants to get rid of its eternal enemy, the Jew? Is it Christian? Self-love is a command of God, and that self-love commands me to remove from myself everything that harms me, that threatens my life. And that the Jewish element was endangering the life of the Slovak. I don't think anyone needs to be convinced of that." Out of the more than 57,000 Slovak Jews deported in 1942, only 300 survived the war. In October 1944, during the Slovak national uprising, Tiso visited Banska Bystrica after German forces recaptured it. He celebrated the defeat of the uprising, portraying it as a betrayal orchestrated by communists and foreign agents, and expressed gratitude to Nazi Germany. This event highlighted his collaborationist stance and cemented his role in suppressing the resistance movement. The following weeks witnessed horrific crimes against humanity, with German troops and Hlinka Guard units burning down settlements and murdering civilians, including women and children. Tiso saw this as a restoration of order. The turning point came with the collapse of the Nazi regime and the liberation of Europe. Tiso was captured in June 1945 and extradited to Czechoslovakia. His trial began in December 1946. The National Court in Bratislava, under international scrutiny, assembled a comprehensive case against him, holding him accountable for crimes against peace, war crimes, and crimes against humanity. The evidence was overwhelming, with witnesses recounting harrowing experiences and official documents detailing Tiso's orders. Despite attempts to portray him as a tragic figure, the verdict was clear. Jozef Tiso was a war criminal. The most enduring and perplexing aspect of his legacy is the contradiction between his religious calling and his political actions. As a priest, he was expected to embody compassion and moral integrity. Yet, he subordinated these principles to ruthless nationalist ambitions. His public pronouncements, couched in religious rhetoric, justified policies that were antithetical to his faith. He preached moral rectitude while endorsing systemic persecution. On April 18, 1947, Jozef Tiso was hanged in Bratislava, wearing his clerical robes. His death was a rejection of the ideologies that led to immense human suffering. His story serves as a stark warning, a reminder of how easily power can corrupt and how deeply ideology can distort the human conscience.